have like this like the electrical company. They have this white van, and when I saw it, like my heart sank. I'm just no,
Yeah.
not again.
Yeah.
I
So
I
hopefully
know they
avoid a
have the.
disaster.
I mean, I know
I
they have this planned like maintenance, but nobody tells us anything. So if I just vanish, uh,
Hmm.
then it's you know
Yeah.
why.
Electrical problems for Black Knight
oh
here.
jeez. Okay, I'm really glad that was electric. It didn't say free candy on the side, right? Because
Yeah,
I
no, it
come in,
says
I've been gone, and
electro
I come.
holding
Yeah.
something, some bullshit.
Aye,
No,
aye, aye.
scary, scary, just scary. I saw all I heard was a white van outside, and you were worried, and I'm like, oh no, not that. White vans are spooky, or they're filled with
Uh,
important and expensive equipment. It depends on which one it is.
yeah, in this case, important and expensive equipment.
Well, all right
Well,
then.
well, with
Yeah.
that said, we are now live.
Woohoo!
So, everybody, welcome to another magnificent episode of Terran Tuesday, where we'll be digging into fantasy, which is sort of like a branch off from our last conversation.
Sweet.
We're going to touch on a lot of that. But how have you guys been? I know Black Knight, you're talking about some electrical issues, but how's the writing coming along? You get much writing done lately?
Yeah, I did. I did. I kind of managed to wrap up an older project of mine.
Okay.
One of my poems.
Ooh.
I've had the draft like for I don't know, 15 years.
Oh my gosh.
I
Oh,
know, I know, I know, I know.
nice.
I'm terrible. I'm terrible at that. If I'm absolutely terrible at something, that's poetry,
Hmm.
especially
No.
completing poems, which I have the drafts of. And I think I have like 16 more drafts,
Sweet.
Whoa.
really, really old drafts, which I can't. I just can't complete them. But when I had a chat with Arcadian last week, we talked about poems. We talked about sea shanties and
Oh, wow.
um, navies and stuff. We just briefly chatted about it and epic poems. And I remember that draft. I revisited it, and somehow I was able to find the right tunes, mental tunes to complete it, and so you
Okay.
can read it. Moral officer Gran read it.
Yay.
She liked it. The poem's name is Victoria Stoyle,
Okay. You can
and it's
bring it up
about
if you want. We could read it on stream if you want.
um someone else should read it, like either you or Snow, because my voice is not
Dude.
You know, under
it's
the
not,
weather?
yeah, a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I'll read, or if Snow wants to read, you bring it up. But how you been, Snow?
I've been playing Beat the Reaper. Woo! And
You've been winning?
I don't know yet.
Obviously.
I guess so. I'm still
You
here.
won this week.
Yeah, I did. I won this week. For anybody who doesn't know, I had a stroke. I actually had a real life, honest to God stroke, like not a TIA. It wasn't, but it was an actual stroke that I had where I lost part of my vision. And people who know me personally know that I'm at risk for that. I have a special condition we talked about before,
Hmm.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I have several comorbid type of conditions which go with that, which means I'm really, really at risk for a stroke. Like at any minute, my blood pressure was like 70 over 30 in a few minutes ago, and then it'll be like 171 over
Ooh,
150. It's crazy.
that's not
It goes up,
nice.
yeah, it goes up and down real fast, and there's really not a way to fix it because I take medication, but it doesn't stop doing what it's doing. So I'm
Hmm.
kind of like every day is a brand new day, and it could be the day. It's like this could be the day, and I get to go home to God, woo, but or not, and so there's other things that can happen too. So I was kind of like prepared for it, and I was like, and when I looked up, and suddenly half of my stuff. Okay, so I told the story. I love string lights. Like, I have little fairy lights all over my house. My
Yeah.
house basically looks like my Megaton home from Fallout with the Love Shack theme on it. It's got all the little sparkling lights and everything, and like velvets and stuff. And I looked up and I was like, oh snap, half of my string lights are out. And then I looked at it again and they were on. And then I looked at it away and they were off. And I was like, I can't see in the upper right quadrant of my vision. And not only that, but I also flip-flopped everything. So my brain went backwards. And then somebody, I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is a stroke. And I was like, I called my
Oh
daughter.
boy.
We're having a stroke. And I was really excited because I got it. So we got in a car and just left because I knew exactly where to go. Because you have to go to a certain, you have to go to a level, like 3, I think at level 1. I forgot. You have to go to a certain level of trauma care. And so we went down and everything. And I stayed in the hospital overnight. And they checked me for a couple of days and made sure that it didn't get worse. And I just lost some vision. So that's all I've lost right now. But it's a little tough. So I may not be on here very long today. Actually, I'll have to, I have some people that are helping me. I move exactly the same. And I've actually been writing. So I was really thrilled because one of the things that's scariest about life with a stroke is that you don't know what it's going to take away from you. So in this case, I just lost part of my vision. Now I got some of it back, which is really awesome. Yay. But there's like a glitch in my vision. So I have to make my words even bigger now so I can see them. But that's cool because I'm still going to be doing what I'm doing. I'm so thrilled that I can still write, that I'm able to type, which was a really big deal. Evidently I'm able to draw, I believe. I think that I'm able to do that. And I'll be finding out more about that because that's actually a very complex brain function. But so the most important thing that I would tell anybody, I was very excited about it, and I encourage everybody, is to know about what you need to look for with signs of stroke. You look for it's called Be Fast, and actually I think it's a balance. B is for balance, E is for eyes, F is for your face. Is there any drooping or anything like that? A is for ANO times 4. Do you know what day it is? Things like that. Do you know where you are and what your name is? Things like that. And then, of course, is signs of stroke, any other signs of stroke, numbness, tingling, or anything else. And then the last one is T, to have trauma center to look at you. So that would be call 911 and get somewhere. So if you know those signs, I was able to go down. And even if I'd had a massive stroke, they probably would have been able to give me a therapy, which actually does have some big risks with it. And you can do that if you get there within, I think it's 4 hours now. It used to be it was an hour. Now we have 4 hours that we can do that therapy. So it's really important to know those. So I feel like a walking, like educational thing. But I did get writing done this week. I'm starting. I have my other book out to edit right now, and then I've also got my beta readers reading it. So if you're one of my beta readers, I love you. Please turn it in. I gotta get it done. And then I've got my next book on deck, and I'm in that place where I said I write in chunks, and I've told y'all that before. It's like little pieces in each group, and there'll be a scene just sort of sitting out there, and I'll play with them and I'll move them around a little bit, make sure that they're in proper sequence because my story is very complex. And especially with regard to the chronology of things, it has to fit together just right. So when I'm doing that, I have to make sure that the transitions are good. Well, if I move even one scene, you've got to go back through everything. You've got to make sure everybody's in the right order, that there's not something left out. I know y'all have probably done this. And then you go in and you have to say, okay, now I've written it all up. But the transitions are the ones that are the hardest for me. The movement from scene to scene. I like to have something that ties the scenes together to make them flow. Somebody looking up at the sun, or a reference to a song or something like that. Well, then you have to go back and rewrite the transitions from scene to scene. And so I've been doing that. So I don't write very much right now, as far as like, I didn't do like, sometimes I'll do 3,000 to 5,000 words a day. All the big chunks are done. Now it's these little pieces, and I'll be like wrestling over 500 words for like 7 hours, to where it's just making the scene fit from one scene to the next and taking out all the extraneous stuff. So I was really, honest to goodness, I was really happy that I was still capable of doing that. That made a big difference for me to know that I made it through this part of the week, and it wasn't that I didn't lose function, because that's kind of, it happens to a lot of people. You don't know what you've lost till you try to use it. And so I was so happy about that I spent probably the majority of my week just writing this week. So I was really happy. And also because everybody tells me, oh, put your feet up. You're not supposed to be up. So I'm just like, okay, I can't do anything. I guess I'll go ahead and write.
There you go. That's an interesting experience, to say the
Well, it's
least.
called an adventure. If you think of life as an adventure, and okay, so life is a game, and if it's a TTRPG, and sometimes the dice gets rolled and you get a bad roll, well, you have to deal with it. You adapt, improvise, and overcome every single time. Think of it as your adventure, and it's so much better. I know some adventures are scary, some adventures are terrifying, some adventures are heartbreaking. It is your story. So this is part of my adventure, and as soon as I said that, I felt better. I knew that God was in control, and this is just part of my story. And as long as I'm prepared to face it head on, then I know somewhere or another we're gonna make it, y'all.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go. And how's the writing coming along in general? Like, because I know you said you're approaching the end of your, at least your initial plan for your books, correct?
Yes, actually, this last 3 books. So I've got the final series. I'm now on the final series. And I'm 75,000 words into it. So
Mm-hmm.
I plan on, because I have such chunky books, and I have a tendency to, I get so excited about a scene that once I write it and it just happens, I'm like, oh, this has to go in the book. I want it. And you know how you have to kill your darlings, but I'm like, dude, these are such great scenes. So I'm having to make sure that I don't overwrite. So I'm going to be writing the last 3 books as a whole. I think I'm going to go ahead and put them out together because they're so
Oh,
complex. I
all right.
don't want to mess stuff up. So this next year I'll be spending actually just writing that set of books, the 3 books together. I'll put them all together, do them all at once, and get all those transitions out of the way. And my hope is that they will be released as a trilogy, the last series of Warlord, and that will
Mm-hmm.
finish out the series because it does have a definitive end, and it has to be written exactly the way I first saw it when I first started this journey. It is really exciting because this will probably be 12 books in total, from
Wow.
Transmutation Texas all the way through to the end. Viva la Vida. And so Viva la Vida will be the final book, and I'm kind of excited about that. So I've already planned on when I finish the series, I'm going to buy a Steam Deck or something so I can play games again and stream them, so that way I can have fun with that, because that's going to be my self reward as I getting through a 12-book series, is to go ahead and buy an actual custom made Steam Deck with a giant screen so I can see it, so I can play.
Wow. There you go.
Woo!
There you go. Approaching the end. There, 3 books. That's got to
Yeah.
be crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I love it. I'm so excited I lived this long. I'm like, woo! I'm almost there.
You're gonna get the books done.
Yes, I do.
We do
Yeah.
have a lot of awesome people in the chat today. We have Moral Officer Duran,
I love
who's
you.
happy to see you.
I love you.
Yeah, she was a bit scared too because you're loaded.
I'm sorry. And I haven't been reading as much or writing as much right now on Substack and things because I'm having to make everything so big, and it's such a
Yes.
struggle. I had a poem I wrote for Mother's Day, and I actually had already had it written, and I just put it back up, and I haven't done as much yet, so I'm still getting my eyesight back. So y'all please be patient with me as I'm trying to. I haven't done as much on Substack, and I'm sorry.
I know what you mean. I've been writing a short story series, and I want to get it all finished before officially release it. So I haven't posted anything in over 2 months now. But I'm approaching the end of the short story series, so that should at least fill up the next 2 months of Substack with material, weekly material. Yes. But with that said, we have an excellent topic today, and that is fantasy. And the reason I kind of chose this is because there's a lot of stuff today that's sort of around the realm of fantasy, but really doesn't sort of embody that fantastical spirit. You see a lot of that sort of like R.R. Martin sort of writes near what I call, like, people would say it's almost like a hard fantasy, but I would say it's not really fantasy at all, because fantasy is more than just I believe fantasy to be more than just the elements, more than just knights fighting dragons, but it's also very thematic. It's the fantasy worlds themselves are some of the most fantastical worlds themselves. A lot of great fantasies that I have written literally bring the world to life, where the various elements of nature can have their own voice and their own will, and it's very fableized. You have assortment of creatures taking on the roles of teachers, and it's more than just goat men and action and shooting fireball out of your hand. But to me, fantasy is something that is laced throughout with the fantastic, to the point where reality itself cannot hold it back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what do you got? Tear into this one, because I know you guys got some interesting explorations and ideas about fantasy.
Well, I must have mentioned Lord of Bones more than a few times, which was perhaps my like return to form, because originally I'm a fantasy author, fantasy storyteller. So and of course there are, as you said, elements of fantasy, heavy elements of fantasy in Star Shutter, but it's not. Yeah, it's you could say that it's a science fantasy to a certain extent.
I would call it that. Yeah, I would call Star Shatter definitely. James has elements of the science fantasy genre, because you have these little steampunky things in your stories.
Yeah.
But in Star Shatter, it's the fantasy is up front, like it too, with our space hamsters and cool stuff. And so I think that's probably the biggest nod to it. And then of course the spiritual, I would say,
the ghosts,
clerical component, sort of.
Ghosts are science. So to anyone who read Lord of Bones, they will immediately notice that thing that you just mentioned, James, that for the forces of nature are actually fantastical. They have, like, they're almost anthropomorphized fantastical creatures. Like the wind is alive, the rain is another being, fantastical being of nature. Earth is another. Plants, they have each their own spirit, like the dryads in the Greek mythology. Stones, and then you get to that other thing which I myself actually love the most in fantasy, which is the spiritualizing items. And I think we talked about the last time that you have like your old like your old great grandmother who had this tool, this knife, or this set of tools, or this pen, or this we talked about that. So in almost all of my works, I employ this because it's really awesome. And for example, in let's say in Lord of Bones, they have like even the simple items which are not considered like the magical items in the grand fantasy, in the epic. Oh yeah, I have this sword, and then its name is this and this, and it can shoot lightning. No. Your pocket knife, it's been passed through like 7 or 8 generations. It's not magical. No. It's not. It's just that amassed so much spiritual energy in it that it kind of like does like help you a little bit when you're using it. In these like mysterious ways that you can't actually like. You're almost seeing it on the edge of your sight. That's something is helping you, and you can feel it probably deep inside. Like you have this always, you have this thought that yes, when I use this knife, I'll be able to, like, let's say, skin the deer perfectly. I won't like harm the skin.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm carving this spoon, this wooden spoon, it will be like extra straight. Like I will not make like I will not take extra wood like and it will not come bent or something. That's what I mean. And in the terms of science fantasy, then you have ships, for example,
Mm-hmm.
some of which are like ships that a lot of people have died defending, and parts of their spiritual essence have seeped into the ship itself. And some of these ships, they become like they develop spirits of their own. They develop souls of their own. And I'm not going to even go to the deeper parts of the fantastical cosmology because that would be major spoilers. But yes, this is one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, so you probably read plenty of great fantasies.
Ah, I
Good
did.
enough. Yeah, but I cut you off there, Snow.
No, you're fine. I was actually thinking. I love the way that y'all handle fantasy, and to me, you guys are first. Actually, even though I know that Star Shatter is a science fiction story, I think of it primarily as fantasy because of our little heroes and the way that they interact and the machinations of the universe itself is our fantasy universe. And the same thing with James's work. To me, it's that James's work has such a cozy vibe. I just love it. It makes me happy to see it, and so I to me that fantasy there is hard to explain how it actually sets up. It's sort of it's almost as if you can't really you have to have experienced great fantasy to love it. And like I said, I think the thing that reminds me the most of your work, James, actually is Jack Vance. You've heard me just talk about Jack Vance, how much I love him, how he's such a great dude. Hang on, I have to kiss my husband. He just walked in. He's been gone all day. I love you, baby. He came in and checked on me and made sure I was still alive and brought me a bag of Takis because that's what you need after you had a stroke. Um, that's great. You have a bag of Takis. That'll take care of that whole problem. Love you, sweetie. Thank you. But where was I? I was not talking about fantasy. There's my fantasy man right there. But when we're writing fantasy, you have to love it. You have to want it to be a part of your life. You want it to be a part of the world you're writing. And I see that in your writing. I see that. I said there's that element of cozy right next to that element of adventure. I think cozy and adventure shows up most with yours. When I look at Star Shatter, I see the that exotic part of it. When I say exotic, and it's a weird thing to say, but it is an exotic world. It as soon as you think you know what's going on in Star Shatter, you turn around and it's completely different. There's something there that you weren't expecting. You know, a hamster with with that's actually a warrior and things like that. It's got elements of Redwall, but it also has elements of space operas in it and things like that. And I love that vibe. So when we're talking about fantasy and we say you have to know it, you have to love it. Obviously Tolkien, obviously Jack Vance, who I'm in love with. I consider Conan to be fantasy, even though it was written primarily as adventure because it has that element of magic, even though he doesn't do magic. He has the fantastical elements that bring it into the realm of fantasy. And
He hates magic.
yes, yeah, he hates
He
magic, but
fucking
he runs
hates it.
into it all the time. That's the whole point is he's fighting magic, Same thing with Solomon Kane, he's fighting against those dark forces, and that's another fantastical world that Howard lives in. And so in writing Watcher the Damned, I couldn't avoid fantasy. I think it is a fantasy. It's not based entirely on science, even though it is there, because there are spiritual elements there, and because they're hard to explain. They venture into the realm of fantasy, especially when we start talking about technology is magic. When we start off in Watcher of the Damned, there's no technology at all. Nobody knows where it is. We have a world of people who are bereft of technology, whose lives have been destroyed by it, who have finally found their way back to actually talking to each other, to actually interacting with each other, except for the Watcher, who is unable to speak without technology. And then we go through a phase where we start finding out there's things that are happening in the world and there's no explanation for it. There's people reaching out and communicating with each other. And we see technology through the eyes of those who don't have it. And it becomes technology is magic. One of our wizards in the story, and if you read far enough, you will find him, is the gambler. And the gambler's a very
Mhm.
mysterious figure in the story, and he is a wizard of technology. He is the one who says technology is magic. Because frequently the more skeptical members of the party who have been living without technology, because it is a very rare item, it's survived a major EMP attack, and now it has ascended to the mythological status. Nobody knew it was even there, and now they're finding out that there's a group of people who have controlled it. They're the elites of the world who still have the ability to access the network and to be able to find the server that's still out there somewhere in the wilderness. And so they're able to find it out in space, this server that exists, and it's magical to them. And when they say, well, how are you going to do this, how are you going to just magically show up and do these things, and the gambler will say technology is magic, and he accesses it in such a way. But we have the science element, and one of the things I love about Vance's work is that he actually has this. He's one of the Jack Vance's work is what a lot of our D&D is based on. The idea of a magic system, of how you put it together and how you expend that energy. And I wanted those elements. I really couldn't write it any other way. And there are things to me that are magical about tech. If you've ever been in the industry, if you've worked with it, then you know how arcane it can seem. To really go in and to learn the command lines is like learning a spell. And if you don't do it just right, you can conjure up your entire computer just crashing. And so there's a demon there. You don't want to let it out. And so that's the kind of that effect that we have. And as we go further into it, we find out there really is a spirit out there. And those who haven't gone that far in the book yet will find out that there is that spirit of technology. There is actually demons and angelic beings that can be conjured through this arcana called technology. So because Watcher of the Dam is so just bizarrely strange in its genre, there really isn't a genre for it, then we have to, how do I market it? It's one of the things I haven't done because I only had 3 slots that you basically can put in for Amazon. I had to pick science fiction because I wanted people to know it actually is it's a sci-fi. It's based on that. We talk about science a lot.
Yeah.
So it had to be there. It's a Western. That's a definitive probably element of it is it's a sci-fi Western. And because it has heavy elements of romance in it, although it's not the main flex of the story, it's part of the story. So we really had to sort of focus on that and put it into that genre. But strangely enough, Amazon doesn't think of it as a romance because it does not fit. It doesn't fit a convention. You have to have certain things happen in order for it to fit into the romance section or the romanticy section. So it doesn't get counted. So instead, it picks up just more on generic science fiction. So I really wish that I could get it sort of over into fantasy. And I think it's just a matter of the readers are finding us because they're looking for something different. But it does have heavy elements of fantasy in it. And especially, I said, first of all, with technology, but the second part is the spiritual or the supernatural component. The ability to conjure life or to see things beyond what is right in front of you becomes and there are unexplained phenomenon that occur in the book, which could be technology or could be something deeper. And because we have a heavy spiritual component in the book, as the Watcher himself is questioning his own beliefs, he's not a true believer. He comes out of a background where he feels deeply wounded by that, and he is very skeptical. He is agnostic at best, but he has very much encounters that are supernatural in their character. And so that element of fantasy as well, I think that's the part that I see in Conan, because the magic in Conan isn't so much about magic like sparkles and flowers. It's magic like scary, deep, dark horror fantasy. And I love that element of dark fantasy, the scary part of it, the part where you are playing with things that could hurt you. Much like I said with code, when you put the command line in wrong and you write down delete tree and it's going to take out your entire computer. Well, you put in the wrong things in a spell, and you're not just hurting someone else, you might be hurting yourself. And so that dangerous element has to be there, I think, for fantasy to really work. It has to be an element of uncontrollable power, that you're playing with things you really don't understand.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chaos. Yes, that's Mike. That's kind of what Michael Moorcock taps into,
Mm,
and
yeah.
then it was later on stolen by Warhammer 40K.
Warhammer. I mean, these days they kind of mm,
They're a
they're
funny
all
one.
over the. I mean, they're all over the place these days. But back in the day, um, I'm not the hugest fan. I've played games.
Yeah.
I've I've read books. Especially, I've read a book about the commissar. Commissar, I think he was Gaunt's Ghosts. Yeah, that was the series. Um, but it's Warhammer's thing is probably on the opposite side of what I write, because it's, although my fantasy and my science fiction has heavy grim elements, it's not overly dark. It's hopeful and inspirational. And you don't have this like, oh yes, it's 40,000 years in the future and there is only war and we're all doomed.
And Hello
Yes.
Kitty. And Hello Kitty is there too. I love that part so much.
Yeah, it's like, yes, it's how many years in, like, in the future. Yes, you have like terrible space aliens. Yes, you have ghosts. You have all kinds of fantastical monsters that can eat you. You don't even know that sometimes, most of the time, you don't even know that they fucking exist. You're just like flying around and or just mowing your lawn or feeding the pigs, and then suddenly you get dragged into a alternate level of energy, and then something horrible happens. But then if it was grimdark fantasy, then you would suffer for eternity, or you would be turned into a demon and then let loose back into your own world to enslave it. But in Star Shattered, someone will probably come to save you. I mean, it's not going to. It's like it's not guaranteed, but something like there is still hope that something will happen. And in Warhammer, there's like hope is almost a joke. Like there are repeated instances where like people are hoping for something and they're being mocked. It's like, yeah, you idiot! How dare you hope? This is bullshit. But it's their brand. This is how they made it. Like everything is you can't win pretty much in Warhammer 40k. Everything is unwinnable. You're just waging eternal war against odds that you cannot win against.
Well, of course, the reason they did that was because they wanted to be able to just keep fighting back.
Yes, they wanted it to be like they purposely did it. That's they did it like that. And in Star Shattered, you have this like fantastical elements that there are forces, perhaps beyond the level of the Chaos Gods, or a single force, maybe. I'm not going to spoil it, which is like, oh come on, stop fucking my universe, like stop ripping my laws of physics, or what the fuck are you doing, you idiots, like stop. And someone somewhere might get squished because they're, I want to become this all powerful demon thing, and I'll sacrifice entire planets, and then I'll get the ultimate power, and I'll be super almighty, and that force is just like going to squish them like a bug under the thumb. It's because it's like, no, fuck you. You're not going to do it. And this is perhaps part of the higher level, the metaphysical unknown level of fantasy in that universe, is that no one can know with definity. It's like that. Oh yes, maybe somewhere, somehow exists some force, or like a being, or beings, or another species that has evolved and ascended, and they will do this and this and that, if something bad happens or if something good happens.
Mhm.
No, you can't know. This is like, when something like that happens, this is of a much higher level of fantastical, if you know what I mean. It's like, yes, it's almost on a godly level of fantastical. So I like having this too.
I think that with when we talk about fantasy too, we're talking about different kinds. For instance, there's adventure fantasy, and then there's dark fantasy, of course, which is the one we're talking about where things are kind of scary and brutal, and maybe there's a glimmer of hope, but it also just is the world itself. A horror fantasy where you have things that happen that are actually very terrifying, and it is different than just plain horror because this goes beyond the supernatural. There are things that I think the element of control in fantasy, the idea that you can do something, that you actually can do magic, or that there are things that you can find which will help you, are part of that fantasy world. And then, of course, there's that hopeful fantasy like Tolkien, where the good over against evil. When we're talking about epic fantasy, there has to be that sort of storyline. It has to go somewhere. It has to, you're going through a process, and it must move towards villainy in the case of Michael Moorcock, or in the case of light, as in heroism, as in Tolkien, probably. Or there's just ones that go through the world in a middle path that just explore the world, and that's the adventure style of it. But the focus when you're just wanting to have fun and have a fantasy, yeah, that part where it's just there's an endless war, and we're going to go out and we're going to go on adventure, and it's this battle this time, or it's that battle the next time. Usually it's focused in just usually it'll be one-off books, or a series that has an episode each book, where there's a specific goal, and they'll go do things, and that world itself, which is torn up or at war, kind of like I would say in some ways Terminator. The series is a fantasy in that respect, although it is very heavily into science fiction. It deals with the idea of that time travel element and the supernatural spiritual element that very rarely gets talked about with Terminator, about life and goodness actually existing. I think that it sort of takes it almost into that realm of fantasy. I know that's controversial to think of it that way, but that series itself kind of does the same thing. It ventures towards, is there a balance of good and evil? We have to move towards something, and is there a way to control it? Is there a something beyond the science part of it? Her meeting her husband, or her husband, her lover, the one who becomes the father of the boy, is beyond the science part of it. It seems to occur just, even though it's arranged, there is an element there that goes beyond just the science part of it and becomes hopeful. There's this love there that transcends so much. And so it takes it out of just hard science fiction, and here's a crazy world, and especially cyberpunk has a tendency to be super dark but really cool. And then there's, as we go towards the fantasy worlds, that there's a beauty in fantasy, I think, that is another element that we don't really talk about as much, as the realm of actual physical beauty, not just of people but of things. That sparkle in the world, which is natural, I think has to be somewhere in fantasy, whether it's in outer space or other places. And both of you all spend time talking about your surroundings and the beauty of it. And when you take it into the supernatural realm or the fantasy realm, I think that beauty has to be there. And that's probably one of the biggest delineators between fantasy and science fiction. Is science fiction is frequently seen as more dirty and gritty, more hard edges and sharpness. The vibe is different. It feels colder. It feels more
Mechanical.
mechanical, yes.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we go towards fantasy, which is it's softer lines. It has an element of naturalness, and it's strange to say it when we're talking about elves and dwarfs and other things, but there's an element of naturalness that seems to go towards the earth itself. And that's one of the reasons why Watch of the Damned is so hard to codify, because I can't there's not really a line between the two. The world is regressed, but it's a rural world. It's where I live, and so I see the mechanical. There's mechanical things that are out there that do have spirits,
Mm-hmm.
that have a actual living. And actually, we go back to AI, which is science. But when you start talking about AI as a living creature, when does it cross the line to become sentient? When does it cross the line to become an actual being? That takes it into the realm of fantasy. And I would say another one that we actually don't talk about very often is the movie itself, AI, which I said was so hard for me to watch that I almost rage quit it because I can't bear the thought of a child being abandoned. And AI, which came out in the early 2000s, I believe is when it came out. I with Haley Osment in it, and the story of an AI which is more like a child, and it was more heavily I think a fantasy than it would be a science fiction story.
Oh yeah,
because it deals so much more with the idea that someone is coming to save him, that he waits for this being to come. But it was brutal.
It was too post-apocalyptic for me. I kind of I rage quitted because of that.
I nearly rage quit it, not because
no, there was too much on the nihilism. So no, I can't.
I couldn't bear the heartache for him, and that really is one of the movies that was one of the hardest ones for me.
They went too much in the nihilismus. Too much.
Yeah.
That was a generally difficult movie to sit through.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've seen that epic anime Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh no, my gosh, no, I can't watch it.
This is like this is much more watchable, even though it's supremely depressing. It's much more watchable than that movie AI.
Well, here's the thing for me. The reason I can't watch Grave of the Fireflies is because I've seen the actual photograph that the anime is based on, of a young boy who brings his sister's body to the for burial, for cremation, and he's standing there with her strapped to his back and just saluting the fire. And I can't bear it. I'm not. I've had everybody tell me how great it is, and I understand. I've gotten to a point in my life where I've seen enough suffering. I know what the story is. I've seen there was a real human there, and so to me, I just can't watch. It's for me, I can't read Blood Meridian, and I can't watch Grave of the Fireflies. To me, I'm not going to make it, y'all. I'm just not.
Then you're not going to be able to read the. I have this draft. I don't know.
Oh no!
You. It's about a specific war, one of the many wars in the Star Shattered universe, and it's from the human side. It's the war for Sirius, Sirius Prime, the main planet in the Sirius system, which was as one of the biggest and first colonies was invaded. It's at a certain point, and though they were prepared, like things went for the worst because they were overwhelmed, and they did a lot of quite desperate things so that their children would survive. And in the end, when the relief forces finally managed to break through and reach the planet was absolutely ravaged. And there were like millions, few hundred millions dead. And in the aftermath, only, for the most part, only the children have survived. And not even all of them. Mostly the babies survive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
So
go ahead.
They placed them in small stasis chambers because they didn't have food and water and good shelter for them, so they would move them around. This is all that I'm going to spoil. Those of you who have read some of the stories, they know about Sirius, and I know so that you won't be able to read it.
I probably won't be. It's really hard for me now. I will say this in writing Watcher the Damned. Watcher the Damned is a world without children at all. And in fact, it's one of the reasons that it feels so hopeless at the beginning, because there are no children. There's no replacement people. When somebody dies, they're gone forever. There's no younger people at all. And the people who are left are ones who are extended their lives unnaturally, either through the viral event or because they are taking drugs to extend it. And so that world without children, there's only a couple of times. It's early in the story. It's like right in the first chapter. I actually describe finding a child. The Watcher finding a dead child, and how much it shocked him, because the first encounter he has is the vision of a child, and he hasn't seen children in so long that it shocks him. And so I wrote that, and I was really mindful of the fact that I'm writing a scene. The child doesn't die in the scene; she's already dead, and he finds her, and it's just a suggestion. He sees this little shoe sticking out from under rubble. And of course, having been an EMT, I've been there on scenes where we find children, and that's a hard thing to talk about, so I won't really talk about it here. It's very difficult to work a death of a child. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and there are harder ones, but certainly those scenes stick with you. And when writing it, I think part of the reason I did it the way I did, where it's just that glimpse, is because there are some things that are just too horrible to imagine, and yet they happen. It's part of the world we're living in. And I think the reason that Grave of the Fireflies and the stories that you're writing resonate so much is because, yes, there are people who have had this as part of their lives, and we have to be able to discuss it. And in fantasy worlds that we don't see, for instance, in Tolkien, we do see children. In fantasy, we're a lot more likely to see children as just a safe little group. Usually there's some threat out there, but they're in a group. They're usually together. And then almost always the hero or heroine is a younger person in the story, so maybe a child as well, but they go off into the danger. But they kind of have plot armor usually. Writing those stories that you have to be hopeful. A story where a child is entering a world that is so dangerous that they cannot survive is almost too hard to write. And I know people have done it. And Grave of the Fireflies, I said, is one. And it's done so well that it has a beauty in its own sorrow.
I have a lot of them.
Yes, you've written so much of that. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about, how do you actually write it without it? When we're talking about fantasy, the element I said of danger has to be there. I think that's part of what makes fantasy, is that it's some uncontrollable power is out there that must be confronted. And when you're writing that with children, how do you write it in such a way that it doesn't become hopeless? Because for me, that's one of the things, is it takes 12 books for me to get the reader from that hopeless, depressed state at the very beginning, where the Watcher is, to his heroic arc as he goes through his life. We have that journey, and part of it is because we go from a world without children to a world where there's a hope of children, and just that hope is enough to catapult him over. How do you handle that, from that depressed or dying world to a world that has a potential for life?
Well, I've probably mentioned earlier that to work on the alternate history aspect of my series, I had to interview a lot of old people, and especially people who survived the Second World War, and certain involuntary vacation facilities. So they have survived such, let's not like tiptoe around it. They have survived such horrible shit that what we can imagine to be horrible, it's definitely on the level of Grave of the Fireflies, and worse for them. And they have survived it. They survived it because you're seeing them, you're talking to them, you're asking them questions, and some questions they will never answer. They'll just give you that look. And perhaps in my case, I kind of stared back one too many times. So in this instance, when I'm writing about this thing that you mentioned, about the transition from horrible, depressing stuff to the hope, this is what actually fueled it, because it's I could just write stuff. I could just, yeah, I'll just imagine something utterly fantastical. But after having so many and long talks with these people, and many of them, they're like quite wonderful people. You can see what they were before they had to survive the horrors that they survived, and how that changed them, yet they still found some strength to preserve like little bits, like sparkles of that hopeful innocence which they had before. And so this is what I do when I begin with when I introduce the reader into some let's say a situation like that on series where children have to suffer through horrible pain and hunger. They lose limbs. They kind of many of them just sacrifice themselves just to have these babies, to secure them, to get them to a safer place. And then you have much later, you have this almost cathartic scene where you witness the babies and some of these children who have survived, and what has become of them. It's something which I was able to write, even though it's really hard to, because a couple of the people that I interviewed, they were little children when that happened, and they gave me that perspective of seeing this, like the horrors of war, for example. And as you know, it was not like a safe war which you watch through the television or hear through the radio. No, you felt it. It kind of dropped bombs on your house, sent soldiers to kill your parents, and or drop poison gas, and etc., etc. So this is, they felt it. They felt it intimately. And when I got this perspective, it really felt almost like all of these talks that I had with them, with these people specifically, was like watching Grave of the Fireflies on steroids, because it's not just an animated movie. They are actually when they're speaking, you can actually feel it's different. We talked about the timbre of the human voice. You can feel
yes.
part.
I think that is the difference when we're talking about how we present. How does fantasy, how is fantasy when it has these dark themes or these themes? Because we think of fantasy, we think of something good. Usually, that's a fantasy. That's something that's special, that it takes you through it. Fantasy can become a vehicle for taking these terrible subjects and softening them, but you have to have actually experienced these heartaches. You have to have witnessed something. in order to bring that terror and that power to the table. And when you're talking about talking with people who have experienced loss and horror and war, we need to do that because our writing becomes deeper and richer. Even when you're writing just a fantasy, even a cozy fantasy, there has to be an element of what you are protected from. What are you safe from? One of the ways to do it is that we don't have to tell things in detail to convey what's happening. For instance, when we talk about the death of children, used to be forbidden on TV, on movies. You could not show it. You could imply that a child had died. You could show maybe that there was something that happened, but you could not show a death of a child. It was too traumatic. The reason why is because people dealt with the death of children every day, and it was considered to be the worst thing that could happen to you. People used to lose their first baby regularly. It was part of life that you had to try to fight just to keep your family alive. You might have 10 children and only 2 would survive. So that image of how do we make it realistic? Well, you don't have to. You can fade to black like we do with romance. And we say that honestly, that there's a point where you let the imagination take over, where you step away and say this horror is too great to contemplate. But you have to know, you have to have experienced it somehow, or spoken to people who've experienced, to give the words life. So you don't have to describe everything, but you need to know what it feels like, and you've got to be able to foreshadow that. Those who know, those who have been there, recognize that authenticity, and it carries the fantasy from the realm of just happy-go-lucky fun into a way to process the real world. And that's where fantasy takes us. It takes us into a different realm to help us figure out our own realities and where we're actually in the process of dealing with our own lives. And so that fade to black of the sorrow is the first element I think that we need to get right. And the second element is to foreshadow the hope. One of the most important things that we can do when we're writing those dark scenes, and I start off with a very dark scene in the beginning of The Watcher of the Damned is very dark. And it would be almost considered, I think, a grim, dark future. And you have to be able to foreshadow hope, and without giving away what's going to happen. You have to give the reader a reason to believe that maybe it's going to get better. How is the hero or the heroine going to survive this? And we know that fantasy, that magic makes it better, or something will happen to help this person. There's the chance that the power could be used for good. There's the chance that an object will come to them that will help lift them out of their depression or their poverty or their hurt. And we all long for that. Actually, in our real lives, I know for a fact there's times we've all looked over and said, oh, I just wish there was a magic wand that I could grab and it would show me what things actually look like, or it would make something happen for me, or it would change my situation, or I would find a lucky penny and it would generate coins. And that fantasy is that foreshadowing that you want to know that the hero is going to find something somewhere. And in fantasy, I think it's so much easier to foreshadow hope. We can have those dark moments of terror and horror and reality if we're able to foreshadow in fantasy that hope. And it's so much easier than it is when you're writing I think straight fictional literature, or if you're writing a science fiction, especially post-apocalyptic like I do, because one of the hardest things to convey with machinery is hope. And if you're in a dark place where it's just machines around you and everything is, you're slaving away for an entity, it's really hard to convey that there's going to be a hope out there. It must come from within, usually with science fiction. In fantasy, there's that element that's ever present, that something else is out there, that there will be something that will come along that will change the state of the world. And it is that element that I think really takes fantasy into its own realm.
Yeah, fantasy has a lot of adventure. I say that I haven't really read a fantasy that has kind of stayed put. It usually takes you to different locales, different locations, reverse, sort of globe trotting a lot. I think of the latest fantasy I finally finished was The Never-Ending Story, which I find that a lot of people generally haven't even read that one, which is kind of strange. But I like that one because it kind of really embodies the most fantastical aspects of fantasy, because it has hope. It starts off from sort of like this dramatic spot, but you see the hope laced in there, and then it takes you on this journey where you follow a hero in his fantastical realm, and then the reader becomes the hero and goes on their own journey that turns into tribulations. So you have this excellent mix of sort of that terror of everything being on the line, where your main character can die here, where this isn't the place he's supposed to be, and no matter how grand and beautiful it is, there are real dangers to him. And then it just sort of, it brings together our world and those magnificent, fantastical elements, because that is one of, if not the most fantastical fantasy book I've read, because almost everything about the fantasy land is really, really fantastical. You got giant flying luck dragons. You got creatures that are essentially walking puddles of water that continuously break down back into puddles of water. Just a bunch of stuff like that. And that was one of the books that's sort of, I'd say probably has had the most impact on my writing, because
Nice.
primarily the last, not the last statement, but one of the last statements when he takes the book back to Orleander's, and then they talk about how the book's gone, and if he could ever get back to Fantastica again, and then Orleander says back to him, every true story is a never-ending story.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that one's sort of like, that's what also not only inspired it to the degree, but my literal, world is called World Without End, heavily inspired by the never-ending story as a whole. But it's also, it's a mixture of inspired by the never-ending story and basically all the media that I sort of consumed over the years, which is why you have stories right now that stories that don't seem like they fit together or operate together. But then if you read them, they mention, like you'll have a story that follows a band of orphans who live in the forest, and the forest itself is alive. But then if you hear the things they say, they'll mention a land that's far away. And if we go to that land, which a lot of my other stories take place in, that land is literally a giant cyberpunk city. Yet you got these boys who fight with sword and shield in the middle of the woods, talking about a faraway cyberpunk city. And all these small hints right now are just the seeds for the long form readers who keep up with it to get the small clues to where it's all leading, because it does all wrap up together. It does all flow together, even though that they all seem very separate. And my latest one that I'm going to be releasing soon is going to sort of be a first linchpin to bring about 3 different stories together for a multi-story arc, so to say. Like each of these is the way that I write it, each story is a story unto itself, but it echoes throughout into the other stories. The stuff that's going to happen in my next story, which is actually a horror story, it is a horror story that I split up into about 8 different short stories that are roughly around 4,000 words each. Together, they're close to like 30,000 words for somebody who's better at math. They can figure that out.
Wow.
But it's a horror story that will have echoes in other stories that even have connected tissue. That's going to be very, very easy to connect, so to say, because a lot of the stuff I do so far has been very, very small, very, very small dots you can connect between the stories. This one's going to be very large. Yes. So that, but a lot of it does come from stuff like the never-ending story. That is a multitude of stories in one. And that, I believe, is the beauty of fantasy, because you can explore real harsh and consequential ideas, but put them in a much more easier to consume format, and with a variety of characters that make it that they give it a different tonality to it. Sort of like a very popular one being, I believe it to be a fantasy, but and that's a fable. But fables are very much, I don't know if fables are considered direct fantasies, but they are very fantastical in nature.
Oh
But I
yes,
was thinking of the book turned into the movie Animal Farm, which I think is probably one of the most studied fantasies of our time, or at least fables of our time.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a beautiful it's a beautiful piece that shows you how you can portray real world political ideas in a easy to consume format. That I, as a kid, actually watched Animal Farm, the original version, and not
Yeah.
necessarily knowing, quote
All
unquote, what it's
pigs are
about.
equal, but some pigs are more equal than others.
Exactly. You know, like, because that is essentially, I believe, where the fantasy comes from, and where most stories come from, is to pass down ideas, ideals, and entertainment. I believe those are the three major ones there, because there's some of the easiest ways to share these things with others.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, one aspect that's apprehended is the propaganda piece. But a good fantasy is more than propaganda could ever be.
No,
And
I think
go
that.
ahead.
And the
Go ahead.
warnings too. I mean, a lot of the tales, like even the most fantastical tales, and I'm talking as someone who studied Slavic tales, fairy
yeah.
tales. You have, I mean, uh, consider just the tales which involve Baba Yaga,
Oh,
and you always have these like enchanted forests where the forest is actually alive, like the rivers are alive, the wind is alive, the
Yeah.
the you can speak to the animals, and you can ask them to do stuff for you. You have like glowing floating skulls that can shoot almost like annihilator beams from their skull sockets, like eye sockets. It's
boy.
madly fantastical. But also you have this like uh aspects of it all where you are taught like the darker dangers about life and life lessons, and through this fantastical fairy tale with
Yeah.
all of these magical things and talking wind and etc. You're given like a life lesson, something that could actually save your ass one day, or your family, or
Yeah.
someone you love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember hearing a lecture once talking about how the human brain works, and that we learn more from stories often than we do direct lessons, particularly the deeper, meaningful things, and also more of the moral aspects and cultural aspects are often easier to share through stories, and people are much more susceptible to understanding those ideas on a deeper level when it's shared through a well written story.
Well, let's also take this as he was talking about fable.
Yeah.
This is the reason why we have used fable and fantasy to teach children and other people what to do in certain situations. Fables exist for a reason. I, as a mother, I can go this way. I'm just going to give you a story right now. Do not put your foot on the edge of that escalator. You're going to get your sock stuck and it is going to stick on there and it is going to grab your leg and it will eat you up. Or we can tell a story. I hate to tell you this, but there was this one child, and they were playing on the escalator, and their mother said, please don't do that, dear. But the little girl, she would not listen. And she began to go, nya, 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 nya. And she played on the edge of the escalator. And her mother said, please, darling, don't. And her hands were full of toys for the little girl. But the little girl refused to listen. She began to mock her mother, nya, 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 nya. And then her edge of her skirt became stuck in the escalator. Her mother said, don't do that. Don't pull on. Just let's get out of here right now. And she dropped the toys, but she still couldn't reach her daughter. And then the escalator pulled that bad little girl down. And I can't tell you what happened next. But her mother cried and cried. And the little girl said she was sorry, but it was too late. And this is always a lesson to you. Listen to your mother. And don't ever play on that escalator with your skirt hanging out. The end. Now, which one are you going to listen to? You're going to remember the other one. One is me nagging you to not play on the escalator.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is a story of me telling you this terrible tale of this thing that happened to this poor girl on the escalator. And my mother actually told me that story, and that's the reason I know it. She was trying to tell we would tell stories because people remember stories. It leads you through a process. Your brain is interacting with the story. A lecture is something that tells you what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. And that's the reason we don't like stories like that. Propaganda is a lecture. Animal Farm is a story, and there's a difference.
Yeah. It's a good story. Yeah. So fantasies. Black Knight. What are some of your favorites? I shared mine being pretty much the Never-Ending Story, which has a lot of that anthropomorphizing of elements and things of that nature. And what are some of yours?
Well, I would say that some of the earlier fairy tales that I read, and I was read by they were read to me by my mom and my grandparents. Some of them you probably know, like some of the more famous Slavic fairy tales. Some of the tales about Baba Yaga, in which the Baba Yaga, who is very much an evil entity, she eats children. I mean, she's a hag. She actually does stuff to help people, but only because they kind of work for her, be her personal slave or something. And this is one of these stories stuck with me because I was growing under these conditions, and I kind of understood it is like, yes, if you work for the regime, one day the regime might like help you. It's almost like the Communist Party is like Baba Yaga or something, that to a small child. And then there was this tale about the three brothers and the golden apple. But by far my favorite was Vasilisa the Wise, where this girl is there are some different variants, with the fairy tales. You have different variants of the same story. So she's abandoned in the forest to die, and the forest is magical. And she's like, please, she kind of tries to talk to the different animals and asks them for help. And she has this loaf of bread because her stepmom, when she dumped her in the forest to die, basically to be eaten alive by the wolves. And what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to you if you're a lone child in the woods? You're going to die. you're going to die. It's like, yeah, but because it's fantastical, she has like she's smart and she's good, and she gives the like pieces of this bread. She doesn't keep it for herself. That's why
Yeah.
she's the wise. She gives it to like, she asks the birds for help. She asks a fox for help. She asks, finally, I think she asks a crow, and the crow leads her to Baba Yaga's house. And Baba Yaga's house is surrounded by this um, uh, wall. Well, it's not. It's more. It's not. It's more like fence of stakes, sharp stakes, which each of them has a skull impaled on it. And these skulls, they are possessed by spirits. They're magical. And so the crow says like, let her in, and it's still daytime. Oh, uh, by the way, in this tale, day is a person, night is a person. There are two brothers. Day is that they're men. Like, day is this like shining blonde man on a white horse, and the horse is glowing, and his hair is on fire. And when day goes out, like this, the light goes out in the world, like it goes everywhere. Everywhere it's like it's sunny, and
Yeah.
but night is a black rider, and when he goes out, darkness comes to the world. So basically, they sleep at Baba Yaga's house, the day and night.
Oh,
It's another thing.
that's
So,
fun.
yeah, it's you have to read it. It's amazing.
I'll have to
So
take a look up later on then.
I have to find a version for you which is well translated, properly translated. It's not sanitized and censored, because I've noticed that a lot of the Slavic tales, because they're very brutal,
Yeah.
they're utterly brutal, they have been sanitized, especially in recent days. They've been sanitized and for the modern audience. So what happens is that this girl, she goes there, and Baba Yaga says, "Oh, who the fuck are you? Oh, I'm going to eat you." And so he says, "Well, don't eat me. I'll serve you. I'll be your servant, so you can sleep and like fuck around to do whatever you want. Like, you don't have to do any chores in the house." And Baba Yaga is like, but you're just a little girl. You're going to fail. This is work for a grown woman. You're weak. Like, you can't do shit. And the girl was like, "Yeah, let's give me a chance. Give me a chance. Test me." And she tests her. She gives her like this insane tasks, which the girl is able to complete, because she fed the animals, she befriended the animals, and she calls upon the birds and the fox and the crow to help her. And because they're fantastical magical beings, they help her complete the task. And Baba Yaga said, "Oh yeah, so you're capable. I'm going to let you live. I'm not going to eat you. Going to fucking eat you. You're going to stay
Yeah.
here. You're going to work for me." And so she works for her until one day Baba Yaga is like, "What do you want?" She asks her, "What do you want?" And she said, "Well, I don't want. Like, I just want to live. Like, I don't want I don't want any riches and anything." And Baba Yaga is like, "No, no, 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 no. You have to want something. Tell me what you want." And it gets like this. It's a long tale in the version that I read it. It's a very long fairy tale. Like, it has it. Vasilisa levels up. She gets more stuff, and eventually she goes back. She goes back. She takes one of the skulls with her, and the skull, when she returns back home, the skull they try, like her stepmother and her stepsisters, they try to I think they try to murder her again, but they fail because the skull kind of laser beams them to death. They burn. But in the meantime, the stepmother and the stepsisters, they've killed the father. They've killed her father to get his wealth, basically,
Yeah.
to steal his stuff. But when she returns, because she's actually she's an heiress. That's why that's the idea. That's why they try to kill her. She returns back home with this skull, and they're like, "What the fuck? We thought we murdered you. We have to kill you." It's absolutely amazing. This in the very same way that Never Ending Story fueled your writing. This was one of the major fairy tales that fueled my writing, and that's
Nice.
why, kids, I have a character named Vasilisa.
Oh, there you go.
Snow can tell you more about her.
Huh. Well, we'll have to check that out because we are 3 minutes over our usual time. Right? This one kind of bled on, so we'll have to rendezvous
I kind
next
of
week.
rambled too much.
That's fine.
See.
That's fine. Maybe you can put in the comments afterwards the name of that story when you find it. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. Where can people find you guys? Why don't we do that before we head out? Let's start with you, Snow.
You can find me at watcherthedam.com, where I have links to all my books on Amazon and other fine stores. And you can also find me on X, of course, where I occasionally will be posting. And you can find me here where I love my peeps. And I have been posting on Substack. I just got to get back to writing my articles, and I have to make myself do it, sit down and take a little extra time now, so that way I can see it. But just and also I wanted to ask your prayers for me that I'll be able to handle what's going on with my life, so that way I can get my books done and be able to be the author that y'all have helped me to be. Thank you for that. And I love all of y'all, and I think you're the best people in the world.
There you go. Thank you, Snow.
Ah.
Black Knight, how about you, man?
Well, you can find me on Substack. You can find my newest stuff on Substack. All of my stories, my weekly chapters that I publish there, the fantasy wind of cleansation, which is like two more like one more chapter left, and the Fridays science fiction mystery detective, quote unquote mystery, more like cyberpunk detective crumbs. Or you can go to Amazon and grab any of my published books, my Star Shatter books, and my story collections, and the aforementioned fantasy Lord of the Bones.
Thanks. Sounds good. Thank you all for joining us for another magnificent Terran Tuesday. If you're watching this in the replay, go ahead, give us a like. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. And with that, check us out live next week when we explore some more interesting topics. Thank you all for joining us, but we are out of